Let me show you how I built this 10 by 14 shed. After laying it out so I could put my eyes on it, I pulled a string to make it parallel with my other buildings. I'm using post and beam for a foundation for this building, so first thing I had to do was dig some holes and put some posts in the ground. The way I've been doing it for years is to pour the concrete in dry and pack it with a pointed stick at the bottom of the hole, and then I use a flat end of a stick to pack the top of the hole. The concrete will draw moisture out of the ground and harden itself. I've never had any problem with it. Okay, I measured from corner to corner, from end to end, and from side to side. Everything is within a 1/4 inch. That's going to work for me. Okay, next I wrap a string around it, measure halfway point from end to end so I can put a middle post in, and same thing over there. Oh yeah, there's the boss man checking everything out. Oh yeah. This creek we're on does flood occasionally, so I put this bottom band where I felt safe. I used 3.5 inch deck screws to put this thing together and came back later with some 4.5 inch leg bolts. When I had it all secure, I started chopping off the end of the boards for the band and the tops of the posts. I marked the centers. I'm going to put my floor joists on 16-inch centers. Okay, I got the floor all put together. It's nice and solid. I'm confident with it. I guess this would be a good time to insulate if you were going to, but being a workshop, I'm not insulating the floor. All right, starting the plywood or OSB on the floor. I'm using 1 5/8 inch deck screws to fasten it down. And I'm trying to stagger the seams so I don't have, a big line going all the way across. Well, floor's in, woo! Next, I'll start the walls. The weather's so crazy around here, I figure I better cover it up since I didn't get the waterproof flooring or subflooring. I believe what I'm gonna do is leave this tarp on it, maybe pull it tight and put some screws in it to hold it down and just frame right over it because it'll be a while before this thing's dried in. For siding on this thing, I'm going to use 4x8 sheets of plywood and then put 1x3 on, probably very similar to this, and that will mimic the board and batten. Since I know I'm doing 4x8 sheets of plywood on the outside, I want to make sure that that lines up in the center of that board. And again, because I know I'm going to use 4x8 sheets, I'll start my tape measure right here and get that 16, and on the next red mark 32, and then 48, and I do that so that the 4x8 sheets will work out good without having to be cut. Okay, my door is going right here from here to here. So I'm going to use a 36-inch door. So I'll measure 37.5 or 38, somewhere in there for the opening, the rough opening. And then I'll use what's left from here to here for my top and bottom plate for this little piece of wall. Then I'll take a 14-foot whole one and go all the way across the top for that double part of the band, hold everything together real good. These walls are not 8 foot tall. From the bottom of the floor band to the top of the wall plate is 8 feet. I did that because I wanted my 4x8 sheets of plywood that I'm using for siding to cover that band that's under the walls, instead of covering the floor band with trim. So this wall was leaning a little bit this way, so I used this brace right here, and I used this to push it in there to get it straight the way I wanted it. Then I just put a screw here, put a screw here. Now everything's nice and plumb. Some might say, why didn't you just build the whole wall and stand it up? Well, that's 14 foot long, that's a little bit heavy, and no sense in hurting myself. And I figured I could do it this way, and it worked out good. Just build it in pieces and stand it up. The way I'll do this other 14-foot wall is by putting this bottom board in, which I did, and then I'll put the top board in, and that'll tie it all together, and then I'll just add the studs one at a time. I attached the studs at the top, which left them dangling down here at the bottom. And what I'm doing here is making sure they're on my mark, putting a block in between them and screwing it down, and then attaching it with these 4-inch screws going straight through all that. This was a lot easier than me trying to lift that wall. I don't think I could have done it. Hey, I think I got it. Looking good. I took these bottom braces off that I used for lifting and raising the walls, and I put a longer one up here. I want the top to be correct. I want the top of the sheet to go to the top of the wall plate. And this corner doesn't matter so much, but I want to get this nice and straight right here. So that's where we're at. Back a little bit. I was glad to have a little help with them sheets of plywood. Just straight going all the way up.
First board up.
Yeah. Woo!
The boss was barking at nothing.
It needs to go up. I used the brad nailer to get the sheets of plywood in place. Then I secured them with 2-inch deck screws.
I like that just fine.
These 4.5-inch leg bolts went through the plywood, through the band, the floor band, and right into the posts.
How are we looking?
Sometimes I just take the measurements and start the screws before I even lift the board. Hey, got all the plywood up. Now it's time to start on the rafters. Woohoo! Okay, I made a little jig that'll hold that center beam. Put one on the other side. So here we go. This center beam is a 16-foot 2x6 piece of cake. To get the right pitch so my 8-foot rafters would work, I drew this thing out with a tape measure and lumber on a parking lot. Now that the center beam is centered, time to make rafters. Once I have one made, I just use it to trace the rest of them. There you go. I'll cut them out, put them up. There's the first two. Well, it's starting to look like a roof. Hey, awesome. That part's done. First thing I'm doing this morning is putting these straps on. Make sure the big winds don't just take it off. I reckon while I'm waiting on the wind, I'll go ahead and frame in these gable ends so they can take siding on them. I'll put a board right there and one right there, and that'll be turned. And then I'll extend these studs right on up so I have something to nail to. All right, there it is. Time to cover them in plywood. Got my plywood on the gables. Very little progress today. It's really cold and windy. I did prepare this. I have these boards on here to catch the plywood that'll go on top of the rafters. I fastened this 7/16 OSB with 1 5/8 inch deck screws. Yep, everything fit together nice. It's looking good. That one piece of OSB was the top sheet on the new stack, so it came painted. I probably shouldn't have took that one. Floor's holding up. Now, I don't really need the tarp, but it ain't hurt nothing. I'll leave it for now. Pretty awesome. A layer of felt paper before I put my metal roof on. It sure is nice to have a little bit of scaffolding to work off of. I mentioned a few videos back that I got a deal on the metal for this shed. It was part of some kind of carport or something that the guy didn't pay for and it got returned. It was all new, so I got a really good deal on it. It's 10 foot long. I only need 8, but it's tall enough that I'm gonna just see. I might want to leave that overhang. It's important to get the very first piece of metal perfect as you can. Then the whole roof will go together smooth. But so far, so good. Looks good with the metal. I put that last little bitty piece. It was 15 inches. I just cut one in half, made it, like 17 inches. And used it for both sides. So for my ridge cap, I have this leftover piece from the porch that I had cut off of. I'm just gonna split it right up the middle, fashion it up there for a ridge cap, and then I'll have the metal on the roof all finished. Woohoo! This 100-year-old farm wavy glass window is perfect for this shed. So what I did was determined where I wanted it, started cutting the studs out, leaving a hole for the window, framing in around it. Then I cut the plywood out with a Sawzall, and then I put the window in and trimmed around it on the outside. My intentions are to put hinges on the inside on the top so it opens in. I'm using treated 1x8s for the faceboard, and I'm just ripping plywood. I think it's 1/2 inch for the bottom side. So fish board and soffits put up. Now I'm gonna do these battens, and like I said, I bought these 1x3s. They're a little smaller than that. I cut the top at a 45, and I'm just gonna fasten them on like this and space them out, and it's gonna look awesome. Here's where I'm at. I got these cut, up they go. Boom.
Number 2.
Yep.
Number 3.
Number 3. I'm doing them on I'm just spacing them out a foot apart.
Number 4. Boss man's checking up on you. Make sure you're working.
He's always checking up on me. I can't get away with nothing. Okay, number 5. Putting these doors in is tricky for me because I was never really shown the right way to do it. So what I do is I take my level, I go back and forth, in and out, sideways, front ways, and try and get everything plumb and level. I cut myself some little wedges off of 2x4 scraps and put the thing together with screws. Every time I put a screw in, I check the door. If it didn't help, I undo it, take it out. I want that crack right there to be even. I want the door to open and close. And I want the lock holes to line up with the casing. And so even though this stud is plumb this way, this casing still needed to be out on the top to work right. Someone might say or ask, why did you do your soffit like that instead of straight across? Well, remember I shrunk the height of the walls and I didn't want that soffit to get in the way of the door. That wouldn't have looked right. So this worked out good. And the reason I shrunk the wall height was because I wanted to cover the band with the plywood. Hey, this thing's starting to look good. Got the window trimmed out a little bit. I'm real happy. It's starting to look like a cool little building. Okay, first thing I'm going to do before I put my felt paper or tar paper up is caulk this crack with the clear. And that'll just be extra insurance that no water's getting in there. So that's first. A layer of felt paper or tar paper before I start my cedar shakes. I just kind of pick which ones look right to me, and then of course I go up. I choose 6.5 inches to go up for the next layer, and then I always stagger the seams, you know, so the one above it's covering the one below it, and there's not much to it. Again, I used my brad nailer with 1 1/4 inch nails. For the fascia board, I used 2-inch nails. These fascia boards were 14-foot whitewood lap siding, 8-inch. We built this 10 by 14 shed for under $2,000 in materials. Now, I'm always looking for discounted materials, and if you keep an eye out, you'll be able to find deals on materials too. The rent-to-own sheds around here cost 3 times as much, and they're built on 2-foot centers instead of 16-inch centers. And they're not as tall, and they're not as sturdy. So with a little time and a little effort, you can build your own shed and save a few bucks. Hey, thanks for watching.